Shax got our hopes up with the Brave Arsenal by telling us these weapons were outlawed for breaking the rules and being too powerful and borderline heretical in the hands of Guardians. So, when the legendary SMG beloved by many, the infamous Recluse, was included in the list of weapons coming back, I think many of us were eager with anticipation about what we could do with this thing in PvP. And now that I've farmed dozens of roles, played around with different perk combinations, interactions, I find myself feeling like Jermaine's girlfriend saying,
"Is that it?"
I'll take some time unpacking the Recluse in this video, but if you just want the TLDR, then suffice it to say that I don't think the Recluse in its current form will ever come close to living up to the shadow of its predecessor, and frankly, I don't see it over time even cracking the top 10 list for PvP-oriented SMGs in Destiny 2 once the hype of it dies down. Too many S-tier SMGs in PvP these days loom over the Recluse saying,
"Future's now, old man."
Okay, so let's get the basics out of the way. The Recluse is a legendary 900 RPM SMG of the Void variety. We do have a couple of those already in the game, including the Death Adder and the Funnel Web, so we may draw some comparisons there. The Death Adder isn't all that popular, but the Funnel Web definitely got some love in the past for good reasons. And frankly, the Funnel Web has some advantages over the Recluse right out of the gate. One obvious blemish on the Recluse that we need to mention is the zoom value only being 13. Compare that to others in the same family like the Multi-Mach with 15 zoom, Funnel Web and Out of Bounds with both of those latter two having Rangefinder to increase that zoom even further, which does still have a lot of utility despite all the rumors of Rangefinder's death. Zoom is an incredibly important factor in Destiny 2, but one of the things that affects the most is your ability to keep the reticle under control at longer ranges. The lower the zoom, the more wildly out of control the gun is going to feel when opponents are at the edge of your optimal dueling range distance. And because of that, the Recluse feels really good up close, but absolutely abysmal out near that like 17-meter distance in my testing. And that's a problem when most people have decent like Shayura's Wraths, which is another Void SMG in the same slot, but can handle duels comfortably out at like 20 meters. Sure, Shayura is a different archetype of SMG, but it's still very common, and it's Void. And frankly, it's twice the PvP weapon that Recluse is, so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. But even if you're dead set on using a lightweight 900 RPM SMG in the energy slot, there are still other options that can quite comfortably duel past Recluse's range. In fact, the Out of Bounds gets little to no love these days despite having an absolutely juiced perk pool, including perks like Killing Wind, Perpetual Motion, Dynamic Sway Reduction, Heating Up, Fragile Focus, Rangefinder, Under Over, Tap the Trigger, Golden Tricorn, friggin' Kill Clip. I mean, you name it, and if it's a decent to good perk, then Out of Bounds has it and can be focused at Shax right now. Mine has literally 6 different perks on it. And playing one game with it after hours of using the Recluse, it felt like I took the ankle weights off and was finally able to frag out. Now let's hit the base stats on Recluse. We've got 40 base range, which admittedly is pretty high. But again, that zoom value basically holds that value back from being as good as it otherwise could be. It's got 47 stability, which again is really good for this family, but I find that going for big stability on top of that base value is really the best way to kit out your PvP Recluse, because it's going to make your duels so much easier to manage. More on that in a minute. Handling is 63, which might sound good, but it's actually close to being the worst in class among non-sunset lightweights. Reload speed is 28, which is average, 55 aim assist, which is the standard for these SMGs, 13 zoom, which is really, really bad, 19 airborne effectiveness, which is less than its competition in the energy slot. Out of Bounds, for example, has 23. And finally, a perfect 100 recoil direction, but again, that number is kind of wonky now that weapons have deterministic recoil patterns. I'll be honest, it sort of feels like the Recluse's base stats are trying to make up for all the things that it doesn't have, right? 40 range is great, but it doesn't quite offset the 13 zoom. 47 stability is great, but the Out of Bounds with the Amalon Origin trait has, at bare minimum, 63 stability when you initiate a duel. Mine actually has 93, but realistically, it's maxed out at 100 at all times because I run Perpetual Motion. So while the initial trigger pull of Recluse feels like turning on a fire hose and then trying to rein it in, the Out of Bounds feels more like turning on a laser pointer. But hopefully the Recluse can make up for that, for all this bad news in the perks department. So let's have a look. In the first column, the Recluse has Dynamic Sway Reduction, which is great. It's got Hipfire Grip, Hard Pass, Repulsor Brace for some PvE synergy with your Void Kit, Threat Detector, which one of my Recluses I use the most has this, grants reload speed, stability, handling when enemies are within 15 meters. You've got Subsistence, Enlightened Action, which is not a bad perk at all, and finally, Feeding Frenzy, which is awful in PvP since Bungie nerfed it many seasons ago, but a solid PvE option. Since this is a PvP review, I can only really recommend that you go for Dynamic Sway Reduction or Threat Detector. Threat Detector is great, but the problem is most people will initiate their combat with you outside of 15 meters. Most good SMGs these days can comfortably duel you at 20 meters, so that's the bad news. But if you can close the gap, then Threat Detector will be a great boon to the Recluse's performance. Otherwise, Dynamic Sway Reduction is probably your #1 option here in the first column. Moving on to the second column, we've got the new damage perk Desperate Measures, which grants a 10% buff after getting a kill, with the weapon for 7 seconds, bumping your damage up to 23 per headshot. But if you get a melee or grenade final blow, then you'll get an even bigger damage buff, which can make the Recluse pretty scary in close quarters, especially on Voidlock running Devour. I put over 100 kills on a Desperate Measures roll, and when the perk kicked in, really could feel like you could shred people if you were positioned well and had health coming out of your previous duel to challenge somebody else with the buff active. Next, you've got Tap the Trigger. Amazing perk on the Recluse, especially since it helps offset that awful stability when you initiate combat. Then we've got Surrounded, which is solid for PvE, destabilizing rounds for those PvE explosions and spreading the volatile debuff. Frenzy for those of you who like it. Target Lock, which is basically useless. And finally, Master of Arms. This is the original perk that made the Recluse what it was back in the day. Kills with any weapon improve this weapon's damage for a short time, basically 7 seconds. This will bump your damage up to 24 per headshot. Definitely not a bad perk for kill chaining, and it's nice that you can activate it with a heavy kill or a kill with the weapon in your kinetic slot. Ultimately, in the second column, I think you've got 3 real choices for PvP. If you want raw dueling potential, hey, go with Tap the Trigger to give you a much more manageable firearm when you first pull the trigger. If you want to chain kills and try to swing for the fences with your kill count, hey, go with either Master of Arms if you're focused primarily on securing kills with your weapons, or go with Desperate Measures if you're running a grenade or melee-centric build. But let's have a moment of honesty here. Those are the 2 main directions you can take this thing in PvP, either raw dueling SMG or kill chaining damage dealer. And frankly, it does not do either one of those things very well. If you do want a kill chaining lightweight 900 RPM SMG, you've already got the Multi-Mock, which has Kill Clip, which is better and easier to activate than Desperate Measures ×2, and does more damage for the same duration as Master of Arms. Out of Bounds in the same slot also has Kill Clip, but while the damage perks on Recluse force you to sacrifice Tap the Trigger, Out of Bounds can have Kill Clip but also benefit from the Amalon Origin trait, which gives you big stability on the top half of the magazine while also increasing reload speed, so it's easier to refresh Kill Clip and keep it rolling. It also has Killing Wind in the first column, so you can full send on the kill chaining and take duels comfortably at ranges the Recluse can only dream of. And to be frank, if you want a raw dueling SMG, then you're probably not gonna go for a lightweight 900 RPM anyways. It's not really what they're good at. But even if you were, you've got the Submission, which is craftable and has a zoom value of 15 and has perpetual motion and has Killing Wind in the second column actually. You got the Funnel Web with more zoom and perpetual motion and rangefinder. You've got the Out of Bounds, which has all the best perks on the Recluse for raw dueling, plus several more options on top of those as well. And it also has a better origin trait for gunfights. There's literally nothing the Recluse does in PvP that another SMG in the same family can't do better. The Recluse to me is a novelty item. It has some fun PvE interactions, but even there, I don't think it's the best in class. If I were to give the Recluse a score out of 10 in PvP, considering what it has, what it doesn't have, and what all the SMG competition has going for it in PvP, I think I'd give the Recluse a solid 6.5. And that's the review, y'all. I'm sorry I didn't have a glowing review for the Recluse. I really wish that I did. I don't like disliking things. I wish this thing was a baller choice for PvP, but unless something changes, I just don't see it being anything more than a collectible novelty item and a reminder of days long past. Feel free to let me know in the comments section what you think of the Recluse and how you're liking yours in both PvE and PvP. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks as always for watching the video. Feel free to leave a like on the video only if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for additional Destiny 2 content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.